You're listening to Melissa and Lori Love Literacy. Welcome to Feel Good Friday. Our guests, Shahir Mustafa and Amy Schneider, saw a need for change in how young kids who are in foster homes were being supported academically. So they began a program to advance equity in education and improve educational opportunities for children experiencing foster care.
Welcome, teacher friend. I'm Lori.
And I'm Melissa.
We are two literacy educators in Baltimore. We want the best for all kids, and we know you do too.
Our district recently adopted a new literacy curriculum, which meant a lot of change for everyone. Lori and I can't wait to keep learning about literacy with you today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Melissa and Lori Love Literacy Podcast. Today, we're learning more about a program called RISE that builds early literacy skills and more for children in foster care. Melissa, I know that you are particularly excited for this episode as much as I am, because this is the season to celebrate all things that are good.
I know, absolutely. Yeah, RISE is a really exciting organization. So I'll tell you a little bit about it before we let the people in charge of it tell us way more about it. But RISE stands for Readiness, Inquiry, Scholarship, Education, and it's a program that aims to build students' early literacy skills. And they do this through culturally responsive, evidence-informed curriculum designed to meet the needs of children in foster care. And it integrates literacy learning with social and emotional skill development and a trauma-informed approach, which are all things we've talked about on our podcast. So
I know they're all really important to wrapping around that literacy development. So we're very excited to talk with our new friends today. We are here with Shahir and Amy. So Shahir, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself first. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having us. So I'm Shahir Mustafa. I'm the president and CEO of Hopewell. And I can tell you a little bit more about our organization, maybe a little bit later on. And RISE is one of the programs that we're really excited about, that you guys just touched on. I've worked in the social services and child welfare space for about 2 decades, both on the nonprofit side and in public roles. And I was just thinking about kind of like my literacy journey a little bit. And, this is so weird, but like, I remember a newspaper clipping from when I was 2 years old, and it was a photo of my mom reading to me, and it was in the Providence Journal. I grew up in Rhode Island. And,
So cool.
I'm mixed race. My mom is white and a lot lighter than me. And, it said, I remember the caption said, Mary Mustafa reading to her 2-year-old daughter, Shahir. And at the time I was like, so I had these mixed emotions of like, wow, I'm in the newspaper. This is so cool. And like, I would show friends and then I'd be like, and they referred to me as a little girl. So there was, some internal, questioning of my masculinity as a young man. So, but that I just, on a serious note though, like I think about, how literacy, really shapes identity. And from the earliest of ages, like I had many intersecting aspects like all of us do with my identity. But one piece that was never a question for me was like, I'm a student, I'm a learner. And, I'm capable in kind of the academic arena. And that started with literacy. And that really has been something that has been a through line in my whole life. So, just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys this morning.
Yeah. Well, it will continue today because we love to learn on this podcast. So we're going to learn from you today. Thank you for sharing. And Amy, would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Amy Schneider. Thank you so much for having us here today. It's really exciting to get the chance to talk to you about the things that we're doing. I am the Vice President of Program Impact and Strategy at Hopewell, and I've worked with kids and families for just over 2 decades, both in schools and in nonprofits. And my undergraduate degree is actually in physics. I taught for a while, and then I went back and got a master's in social work and have been in child welfare. And so part of what I'm so excited about with this work that we're doing now is that the child welfare system and the education system really tend to operate in silos. And there's a lot of reasons for that. They're both really big systems, and it is hard to integrate them. And what that means is that kids that are experiencing foster care can sometimes fall through the cracks. And so I'm just really excited to get to bring my love of identifying and trying to solve really complex problems and innovating and thinking about data and also just working with kids and families and meeting their needs. And what we're doing now really allows us to have this great playground to work in that brings together so many of the things that I love. And we're just really excited to get a chance to share that with you and your audience today. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we'd love to hear a little bit about how you all got to Hopewell and how RISE came to be. So I'm going to turn it to Shahir since you introduced yourself first. I'm super excited to hear about how RISE came to be. So I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll try to keep my journey on the shorter side, but, similar to Amy, I have a master's in clinical social work. My trajectory was maybe a little bit more direct, right out of, college, went to graduate school. And, so I've been working directly with kids and families involved in the child welfare system since I was, in my early 20s. And as I mentioned, I kind of, I was a program person. So I worked in a variety of different settings, residential programs in the foster care space, in clinical settings, doing therapy with kids and families, and then moved into kind of management and leadership roles. And so I got recruited at one point over to work for the Department of Children and Families. So I was an area director there for 6 years. So I got to work directly in the child welfare system. And I have to say that was a very eye-opening experience for me. A lot of the assumptions that I had about how that system operated, the challenges they faced, I learned a tremendous amount. And I have incredible respect for the people that work within that system. And simultaneously, that system is very limited in terms of its capacity to affect change. It's under-resourced. I think it has an impossible mandate to keep kids safe while simultaneously preserving families. So there's just a lot of structural elements of that system that I think are fundamentally flawed. And so when I had the opportunity to come in and lead a nonprofit organization that was, less bureaucratic, less encumbered by these bureaucracies and red tape, that was something that excited me. Because like Amy, innovation is something that really inspires me, and I see it in the world around us. It's all around us in so many different dimensions. But when I think of child welfare, innovation is woefully lacking. And so that's something that, I feel very passionate about, because kids and families deserve our best. They deserve that innovation to push the envelope, to do better. Because in the 20 years I've been doing this work, not a lot has changed. And that's really unfortunate, because that's kids and families that are suffering in ways that I think we can do better. So that's kind of just my orientation to this work. I think it's important to start with just kind of the scope of the challenge. So, I'll just put this out there. I don't know how many folks are familiar with the kind of experiences of youth in foster care, but unequivocally, they are the most marginalized group of young people in our nation. And the data bears this out. So only 3% of youth experiencing foster care will achieve a post-secondary degree. 3%. 75% of males will be arrested, on probation, or incarcerated by the time they're 26 years old. 3 out of 4 young males with any exposure to the child welfare system. I'm not talking just foster care. I'm just any contact with child welfare.
What does that mean? Like sorry to interrupt you, but any contact with child welfare, what does that mean?
So that would be just an open case with a child welfare agency. So, when a report can be filed, a case is opened, a family gets involved with Child Protective Services. The majority of situations do not result in actual out-of-home placement. So only a small percent end up in foster care. So, the outcomes that I'm talking about relate to youth experiencing foster care, but on that specific metric, it's talking just about any contact with child welfare at all. Wow. Is essentially a proxy for future incarceration.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
40% of young people who exit foster care will be homeless within 1 year of exiting the system. And these outcomes, they start early. And that's really so we have programs that support youth when they age out of foster care. But the driver of RISE was to say, we need to do something upstream, because what we're dealing with this kind of this situation when kids are 16, 17, 18 years old. But really the challenges start much earlier than that, right? And so what we know is that kids experiencing foster care bounce around a lot. They move through a lot of different placements. And depending on where you are, it's often common for kids to experience anywhere from 4 to 8, sometimes in a dozen or more placement changes throughout their foster care experience. And so, I'm a parent of 2 children, and thankfully they have a stable 2-parent household, a multi-generational household. And I can't imagine what that would be like if they had to change schools or placements 8 times. I mean, of course they're going to fall behind academically. And what the data tells us is that for each one of those placement changes, they fall about 6 months behind academically. So our system, in an effort to keep kids safe, ultimately creates another challenge, which is an increasing academic opportunity gap. So youth experiencing foster care will now be 2 to 4 years behind academically, just by nature of being in foster care. So we said, there's got to be a better way. We got to do something about this. So we partnered with one of our corporate partners, Liberty Mutual, and their corporate strategy and research team. And we basically did a national scan on best practices for high impact tutoring and education models for this population. And we chose literacy because, again, we're data informed, we're data driven. And, by the end of 3rd grade, that's a huge milestone for literacy. And if kids are not capable of reading on target at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, they can know that they're falling further and further behind, and those academic losses are compounded. So that was one data point that we said, okay, we need to do something that captures this population. And unfortunately, there's really no models out there in the entire country for this population. There's some things that are designed around basic homework help and kind of more generic support, which is great and which is helpful, but nothing that's really pointed towards a competency-based framework, a skill set around literacy.
Yeah, Lori and I talk about that all the time with just tutoring in general, that it is often just like helping get caught up on classwork or homework or,
right.
Just that very general stuff.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, this is so much. This is so much to take in. I'm glad you're sharing it, but it's so much to digest right now.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, one key aspect to the model is that it's a home-based model. So there are frameworks out there that are school-based, but because of the transient nature of the population that we support, we knew it needed to be a home-based model. So that's why we provide in-home high impact tutoring directly with the young people, their foster parents, and if they're reunified home with their caregivers. That's a key ingredient to this model. And then there's another piece around educational support because a disproportionate number of kids in foster care are placed on 504 plans, have IEPs. And as you know, that system can be daunting to navigate. And so we provide support to youth and families and kind of advocating on their behalf, ensuring that their academic needs are being met, in addition to providing that tactical tutoring component.
Amy, you ready to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I can share a little bit about the model itself.
Yeah, that would be great.
So there's 3 important components that we really like to call out when we're talking about RISE. And the first one is that it's really important, we've learned, to have a really strong research-backed curriculum that's been custom designed to specifically meet the unique needs of kids experiencing foster care. And so we have partnered with an amazing organization called Crafting Minds, and they have worked with us to develop structured literacy routines and a full curriculum, helped us understand what assessments we need to be using so that we can make sure that we are meeting the needs of kids from a literacy perspective and a social emotional perspective, and also really attending to their unique needs. So what we do is we assess each child's strengths and areas of growth. We use, as Shahir mentioned, a milestone-based approach that targets instruction. So we're meeting them where they're at. And this is most important because we have kids that have bounced from school to school, and they might not have been taught literacy in a way that was progressively building upon prior skills. So this allows us to really identify any gaps and address those, regardless of what's actually going on in their classroom currently. And the tutors use a structured literacy routine when they're working with kids that's based on the science of reading and the things that we know from research are important building blocks for learning to read. So they use a combination of direct, explicit teaching, building on concepts over time, and diagnostic information gathering. So we always know exactly what students know and can do and what areas they can work on, and we're assessing that regularly. We also use phonemic awareness and phonics routines with the kids that give them opportunities to start out practicing letters and sounds, and then words that have those letters and sounds, then phrases and sentences with those words, and then text with those sentences. And we're working on sentence level and passage level comprehension skills, as well as vocabulary, fluency, and writing skills. And so the kids are getting a chance to apply what they're learning, and they have the tutor right there to guide them. And then the second component that we are really focused on is that we know that this is not just all about academic skills. So RISE is really designed to incorporate the types of social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health supports that kids experiencing foster care so often need. We know that social emotional skills and trauma can have a huge effect on learning. And so the approach that we take is to embed opportunities to practice and develop those skills into every single literacy lesson. So our tutors plan out activities that hit on all different parts of the CASEL framework. So everything from self-awareness and self-management to social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And then just on a human level, our tutors really try to get to know each kid and to personalize their time together. So they'll infuse things the kids are already interested in or excited about, whether that's dancing or basketball or arts and crafts or whatever that may be. And then the third key component is that it takes a village. So, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to supporting kids. And for kids in foster care, that makeup of adults that are involved can get really complicated and hard to coordinate. So there's caregivers, there's district and school administrators, there's social workers, there's teachers, there's Department of Children and Family staff, there's staff from other provider agencies. And we're really trying to help create a cohesive group that is an entire team of adults that can really work in concert to support a child's life. So RISE is really intentional about that process. And one of the things that we do that's really not common is that we are intentional about involving and supporting any caregivers who are involved in a child's life. So that might be a biological parent, a foster parent, someone else at home, a combination of a range of people. When kids are moving placements from home to home, we want to make sure that the next home they're going to, if that's been identified ahead of time, we're already working with that adult and caregiver to help support that transition. And the caregivers, as Shahir mentioned, they need support too. The child welfare system and the education system are both really complex to navigate. So our staff is constantly checking in with caregivers, explaining their child's progress. We're leaving books and activities for them to engage in reading at home. We're talking about making reading nooks. We're in the home environment. And so we get to actually see what it looks like when the child is at home and experiencing reading in that setting. And so from sort of a occupational therapy perspective, we're able to really look at what is important in that setting. And the other big part of this is really supporting the amazing and important work that each child's social workers and the teachers are already doing. So keeping the open lines of communication to promote information sharing, developing relationships across state agencies and schools and families, and trying to do it in a way so that the caregivers that are involved feel empowered to continue to do that after we've stopped working with them. And then the other key thing that I just want to make sure we share right away too is that we are working with this incredible team at Brandeis. The Heller School for Social Policy has a Center for Youth and Communities. And we're working with a really great team there that has previously helped us at Hopewell develop our theory of change and some logic models. And they're now working with us as our evaluation partner. So, it used to be best practice to go off, do your program, see how things work out in the end, and bring in an external evaluator at the end. But best practice now is really involving external evaluators from the beginning so that they can help guide the process and make sure that as you're creating the measures that you're using, you're doing that effectively from the beginning. And so they've been helping us at every step along the way to make sure that we are really, considering all the things that we need to so that we can effectively measure our impact.
Oh, I love that.
And our impact is really...
I love that, Amy.
Yeah. It's been really great.
We talk about that a lot. Melissa, I don't know. Is that like improvement science? You're the expert on improvement science.
That's exactly what came into my mind, right? You don't want to wait until the end, right? You want to make improvements along the way. Yeah. I just love everything that you just talked about, Amy. I think we take for granted sometimes that, we make a lot of assumptions about what we think students have learned in school, what they're getting at home. And especially with these students who are in foster care situations, that you can't make any assumptions about what they got in school, what's happening at home, and I love that you all said, you're basically taking the time to learn what's happening for each student, where they are academically, where they are emotionally, where their whole, what's happening at their home, right? And that's just amazing to be able to really see what's happening so you can meet all of those needs. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shahir talked about how, we did this landscape scan to figure out what was out there and what exists. And a lot of what's out there are these really, really effective, they're often referred to as high dosage tutoring, or HDT. There's a lot of research done on them, programs that exist in school settings and work repeatedly with kids throughout the week and have a lot of contact with them and have these very rigorous models that they use. And many of these models ultimately exclude the population that we're working with because they either require kids to not be all that far behind grade level or they stay with the school. Right. And so when kids are moving placements and moving schools, or when their gaps are so huge, that model might not be specifically built for them. And on the flip side, you've got these programs that are going into homes and really trying to meet kids where they're at, but they're not milestone based. And they're really just focused on what's going on in the classroom and trying to help the child coordinate to where that is. And so while those programs are all incredibly valuable, we have found that the kindergarten to third grade timeframe is this crucial period to make sure that those gaps get filled in. And if they don't, then a child doesn't have the reading that allows them to be able to do the things they need to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to ask that. What do you work with older students as well who might have missed that, what they needed in the K through 3 grade levels?
Yeah, great question. So we don't yet, but that is our goal. So we are starting with kindergarten through third grade in the greater Boston area. And our goal is that we will eventually be across the entire state and working with a wide range of ages and potentially subjects as well. But we wanted to start somewhere, figure out how we could do this really well, make sure that our program's working and we're getting good data, and then grow from it.
We'll have to talk to you again when you work with the older students too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. I'm wondering if you have any stories of success that you all might be willing to share, some that stand out to you as something that our listeners might enjoy and maybe why they're successful. And I'll turn it over to you two. I don't know who would like to go first. You can.
Well, I know Amy's got a couple. I'm already thinking about our superhero friends. That might be a good one to share.
Yeah, absolutely. We really work to try to make everything fun. And a lot of times when we start working with kids, it's about building that relationship, figuring out what gets them really excited so that they don't feel like we're just like another class at school. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've been finding is that we have a couple of kids that are really, really into superheroes. And it's been really fun to see kids who start out by saying, I can't read, I'm not a reader. And, one of the things that we know about academic success is that it's not just about having the academic skills, It's also about identity and whether I believe that someone like me, however I define like me, can be successful. And so if we can help kids reframe their thinking around what is possible for themselves, then that can really shift things. And so we have a group of siblings that we're working with that started to get really excited about reading together. And the older one actually shared that he was going to start reading to the younger one every night and that he could do it because he's a superhero reader.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just really, really touching to see that. Yeah.
I can't imagine what kindergarten, first, second, or third grade teacher listening would not think that was amazing. Like every teacher right now is like, that's so cool. I'm going to use that in my classroom. You're a superhero reader. Oh, I love that.
Absolutely. We've even gotten some superhero capes to integrate into our work.
Well, I'm curious about, we brought up continuous improvement. So my brain is there. I'm wondering if there's anything that, as you all have been implementing this program, if there are things you've learned along the way, like things that needed to change, things that made it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're building the ship as we sail. So we're finding that being really determined in the work we're doing is important, but we've got to be really flexible too. I mean, when we first started, we envisioned that this was just going to be sort of an out of the box literacy program that we were going to select. We were going to research the best one and drop it in. And when we spoke to educators, we realized that developing a curriculum of structured literacy routines that infuses social emotional learning was super important. And actually, we interestingly found that we didn't need to bring in people that were literacy educators to then do this out of the box solution. That if we worked to develop a curriculum that was just right, which is what Crafting Minds has helped us do, then we could actually hire people who have lots of experience working with kids, who are genuinely curious, who operate from a place of meeting kids where they're at, noticing what emotions they're having, responding to them in the moment. And then the literacy piece, it's not secondary, but you can't do it if you aren't attending to those other pieces. And so it actually has been really helpful because the workforce crisis is real, right? We haven't been able to grow the program as quickly as we initially planned because it's been hard to recruit staff, but this has opened up opportunities to bring in folks who don't necessarily have the literacy experience. And then the other thing that we've learned that has just been really valuable and has just been evolving a lot in the last couple of days. In fact, Shahir and I were just having a conversation about this yesterday. I mentioned at the beginning that the child welfare system and the education system are really siloed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there's all these staff that care so much, but there aren't really good avenues for collaboration. And sometimes folks that are working in each system don't even know how to get in touch with the people in the other system. So there's some basics we can do around coordinating across these connections. And we've also been learning that school staff in particular, principals, literacy coaches, teachers, family engagement specialists, social workers, want to learn about how to best support kids experiencing foster care. So we just did a training with over 30 social workers from the Boston Public Schools, and it was an hour and a half, and they had such wonderful questions, and there was great conversation, and we just talked a lot about the unique needs of kids in care. And these needs don't get typically covered in an explicit way during preparation programs or PD trainings. And so we're just finding there's a real opportunity here. And as we start talking to more and more people are coming to us and saying, can you come talk to us about how we can actually shift things in our schools to best meet the needs of these kids? And the systems themselves are not well set up for that kind of transition. But as a private agency, we can come in and offer some supports and some consultation and some training. And our vision is that we're going to be able to work collaboratively with the people that are making these changes to try them out and be able to figure out what are some models that can really work big picture. So I don't know if maybe you were asking more specifically about the learnings about kids and their outcomes. I can talk about those too, but I think those are some of the sort of high level things that we've been noticing.
Yeah. Shahir, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I've learned is that, innovation and kind of systems change requires like risk taking. It requires courage and it requires a vision. Um, Obviously, it requires inspiration to do better by our community, but it also it requires partnership and collaboration. And I think we realized very early on that this was not something that we could do by ourselves. And this saying about it takes a village gets kind of played out, but it's so true, right? I mean, you have these systems that have all these people that really want to hold young people at the center, and unfortunately, kids are still slipping through the cracks. So how do we create those pathways, those channels for people to collaborate most effectively? And so Amy talked about, on kind of like the child welfare system and education system, but even just kind of like how our organizations are funded, but the public-private partnerships as a private nonprofit with state contracts, those contracts do not allow us to kind of innovate, right? They just allow us to kind of move right towards the middle, the bare minimum of what kids and families really need. And kids and families deserve more than the bare minimum. They deserve, especially young people who've experienced the trauma of, entering the foster care system. And so, we've been able to partner with some incredible corporations, foundations, institutions of higher education. And none of this would have been possible if any one of us alone was trying to do this, right? It required all of us coming together. Obviously, we have a long way to go and a lot to learn. But I think that to me is cause for hope. That there's an awakening that I think is happening around racial reckoning, around marginalized communities, and people seeing that like collectively we all have a role to play. So that to me is like a learning that I hold.
That's so cool. I think I might have to title the episode Cause for Hope. Melissa, what do you think?
Oh, I love it.
Well, we are really just grateful that you took the time to come on today. And I think before we close out, we'd like to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know? Is there anything that you didn't mention that feels important?
I just want to kind of just go back to, I'm on this mission and, Amy is as well, because we've dedicated our careers to this. So we live this, we see this every day. But to so many people out there, the stories of youth experiencing foster care are just unknown. It's a population that is unseen. And so I hope, whoever's listening to this feels a little bit more educated about the experience of young people in foster care. That there's an urgency to this, that we need to do better. We need to do something now. They can't wait anymore. And then the other piece that I would say is like, this is a solvable problem. You know what I mean? We're not talking about world hunger. I mean, this is solvable. The scale of this is solvable. And in our country, with the resources that we have, there is no reason that we should be seeing the outcomes that we are seeing. And I believe it will get better, but it also requires all of us engaging. And it requires kind of support for this type of innovation. So, I'm a hopeful person by nature, but I just think, I hope people can acknowledge this experience of youth in foster care and see that it's something that we can do something about.
What strikes me about what you just said is that both of those things that you mentioned, that like it's a solvable problem and that it's like a really, really important one. Both of those like cross over for like so many big things that we talk about in this literacy space. So there's so much crossover here. And we're so glad that you took the time to come on. We really can't thank you enough. This has been such a hopeful conversation. So we're just grateful that you took the time to spend some time with us during this wonderful season of giving.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, literacy lovers. To stay connected with us, sign up for our email list at literacypodcast.com.
And to keep learning together, join the Melissa and Lori Love Literacy Podcast Facebook group, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to share with a teacher friend. or leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Just a quick reminder that the views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of the Melissa and Lori Love Literacy podcast are not necessarily the opinions of Great Minds PBC or its employees.
We appreciate you so much, and we're so glad you're here to learn with us.